Hello, everyone. Today I want to share the batch update and batch create methods I built for Power Automate and Excel. Basically, I was exploring any new automation options that may be possible with the built in Office scripts and JavaScript integrations, and I started looking into Office script builds for batch actions. Batch actions mean we can send entire arrays of data to Excel for processing instead of sending one row at a time in each API call. There are some great performance and efficiency improvements from sending one or a few large batches of data instead of one row at a time, especially if you're trying to transfer thousands or hundreds of thousands of records from one data source to another. And there are a lot of complaints about slow running flows, throttling, and daily action limits on licenses when people try managing large amounts of data with the standard Power Automate row by row actions within loops. So the few batch create Office scripts I found in existing blogs and videos were pretty good, but they weren't very flexible to different potential Excel tables, and they require the flow builder to go into the Office scripts and manually change the table column names anytime any name changed or anytime they wanted to use it for a different table. Also, no one seemed to have built any Office script method for batch updates yet. So that's where this build comes in. I've developed a template flow and set of batch update and batch create scripts that should be easier to use and that are adaptable to any table without the need to change the script code to fit the specific table. So first, let's cover the one requirement for your destination Excel table, a primary key. In other words, the table you want to send the data to like this must have a column of values that is not empty and unique for each and every row. If you don't already have such a column, then you may want to find a combination of the existing columns in your list that can form a non-empty and unique value for every row and create a calculated or formula column that concatenates those for each row. In this example, let's combine these email and date columns. So I'll just go over to this generate PK column, generate primary key column, and I'll do equals, and then this ampersand this, and that will fill in that column with all these unique values. And once that's all set, we can then go over and find this page, which will be linked to in the description. And this is where we can download the template so that we can start building out our actual flows. So I'll just click here to download the regular version of the batch upsert flow, and I will send it to my downloads. And then once that's downloaded, I can head over to my flows page and I can click the import option. And then I'll click upload the folder or the zip folder. And here I'll just set the connections with the account that I use for this environment. So click that, click save, and then I can hit import. Now, it will probably give you this error because the template is trying to reference table names that do not exist in your environment, but it shouldn't be any trouble. Just go ahead and click this link. And that link will take you to the template flow where we can start replacing the placeholder table, column, and other data values with the values for our new use case. And here I will just replace this with that primary key column that we created. Do the same in the run script for the batch create. And once we have set all those up, it should then allow us to save the flow. And I'm just going to rename this for this demo. Now, if we go out to our regular flow menu, you'll see we now have that flow listed in our usual list of cloud flows. So let's go back into it. And the other piece of setup you'll need to do the first time you use one of these flows is uploading the Office scripts. So in these first couple compose actions, I provide the entire script code. So I'll just click in here and then use a Control A and Control C to copy that entire script. And then I can head back over to my Excel workbook and it'll probably look like this. So then you'll just go to the Automate tab, click on New Script. That will bring up this code editor box. And I can just delete the code that's there and paste in that code that was provided. And then I will rename this. And save that script. And then I'll go back over here and do the same for the batch create. Also, just so you know, you should only have to do this once. So once you've set this up for one flow, then it will be saved on all your Excel workbooks. So you'll be able to access it from any other Excel workbook or any other flow run script action. Save that. I can go back to my flow and I'll exit out and then re-enter it just to make sure those Excel connections are refreshed and we'll have the right scripts in there. So I can go here, go want batch update v2. There we go. And then I can do batch create v2. Okay, that's all set. So then I can just hit save. All right. From there, you'll probably want to go to this first Excel action and replace it with whatever data source you want to batch update and or create from. That really could be any action for getting data, the Excel connectors, SharePoint connectors, API calls, Dataverse connectors, a CSV parser, any type of get data action that returns your data in a JSON array. And once you change that out, then you'll also just want to change out this dynamic content for that Excel action to the dynamic content for the output of whatever action you replaced it with. Now, this also gets us to this main input piece for this flow. So basically, you're mapping out the destination Excel columns, the columns in your Excel table that you're sending the data to the updated values from the data source that you've chosen. And the most important part here is this primary key column. This isn't explicitly the name of a column from your Excel table. It is just how the program figures out what rows to update with which values. So if I go over to the source table here, you'll notice that I don't have a corresponding generate PK column that matches the generate PK column in the destination table. That's really just to show how you can still use this template even if you don't have an exact matching key column. As long as you have the columns that make up the primary key in your destination table, then you can still work this out by combining those values in this step. So for instance, for the destination table generate PK column, I believe I did the destination email followed by the destination date. And so if I just put those one after the other, that should generate the matching values to match up the rows in the destination table. So that's the main primary key piece. But if I go back to the source data here, you'll also notice how I've included most of the different data types you could possibly use: strings, dates, integers, booleans, even some multi-line text column here. And then I've also included a column to show how we can selectively update or not update certain cells within a column, or also a column over here, source C9, which corresponds to this destination C9, where we'll be looking to make this column null, or to basically blank it out so that these will all become blank values. So I'll go back to the flow here and go in here. You see I'm pulling in the serial number to match here, the serial number date to match here, but also I just want to change this to pull the first 30 rows because I've set the destination table to only have the first 30 rows for this initial test. And I'll go back here, and then I also need to make sure that this batch create section doesn't run because we are only testing batch update right now. So I'll do has timed out, and that should make it so that that won't run. If you are really setting this up to only be a batch create or batch update, then you could just completely delete this scope and it would only be a batch update. So close all that up and save and test. Okay. And here is all the updated data with all the different data types. You'll see it blanked out the column that we wanted to make null. And if you look at this piece, it did selectively edit a single cell in a column based on criteria in our expression over here. So let me pull that up. See, if the 6 column had string 5 in it, then we wanted to edit that specific cell. So string 5 corresponding cell over here is edited. And if you need to do anything similar, just make sure that you are putting in the 2 single quotes for any of the values or criteria for things that you want to leave unedited. You can also do a similar thing with the null values, where if you want to remove that cell that fits certain criteria, then you could put in null instead of the 2 single quotes. It's just that the program will recognize the single quotes as something that it shouldn't edit, and then it will recognize a null as something it should completely blank out. And if you need to remember that, it is listed in the instructions up here for your benefit. You can also see all the columns over here that we didn't map out. They all remain the same. And we can go down and see, yes, it got all 30 we wanted to update. So that was all successful. Now I will just come back here and I will start editing this for a batch create test. And to change the batch upsert template over to a batch create template, all we're going to do is come to the batch creates run script, remove that data, and then drag this up here. And we're going to make sure that this batch create gets the same data that the batch update was originally getting. So select remove blank lines. And then I can just delete this update Excel rows. And I can delete the rest of the batch create scope. And so now this is only a batch create. From there, I'll just set this action to get the 470 rows after the initial 30 rows that we just updated. And I'll run that batch create. Not that, test. Here we go. Okay, that completed in less than 20 seconds. And if we go back to our destination table, we can see we have the first 500 rows from our source table over here. And that includes all the different data types, including the nulled out values and the ones that we selectively did or didn't edit. I do see we have the serial number dates here, and that's because I set the Excel source get data action to serial number dates, so it returned them as serial numbers. I can always convert these to a date format here in Excel, go to short date, or I can also put in some expressions in the Power Automate flow to convert the serial numbers, the Excel serial numbers, back to regular dates before they're entered here. Other than that, everything is looking pretty good here. So that's how to use this template for only update or only create actions. But let's move on over to our batch upsert, which is another way of saying a flow that updates all the rows that are already in the destination table and then creates all the rows that aren't yet in the table. So I'll go back to the source data set and let's just change out this value so we can easily see when the rows are updated. Then I'll go back to the upsert, double check here. So I'm going to grab the first 1,000 rows from the source table. And that means since we have the first 500 rows already in the destination table, it should update all these, change these to false. And then it should also add the next 500 after that. So let's go over here and we can start this flow. All right, that ran successfully. Now, just to show a little bit of how the batch update connects into the batch create. So the update run script action, I have it set in the Office script to, at the end, return this results array, which will contain all the primary key values that it did not find in the destination table. So all the rows that don't exist yet in the table. And of course, once we have that output array, it's relatively easy. If I go back here, I can show you. It's relatively easy to then use a filter array action to then check that results array and check which of the update values is not, or which update values are in that results array. So essentially, this connects into this piece, which is ultimately pulling from the generate update data piece. So this is just saying return all the update rows where their primary key is contained in that update script results. So all the rows that were not found in the table, it's going to grab those update values from up here. And then from there, it's pretty easy to just insert that into the create run script action as the array to then use to create values in the table. But let's look at this overall. So I will go back here. This all ran in what looks like less than 40 seconds. And if we go over to our destination table, I can see all those rows are now false. And we have the full 1000 rows. So it successfully updated these and then created all the remaining rows. So less than 40 seconds on the batch actions, but now I'd like to compare that to the standard way of updating and creating rows in Excel. So I will go here and all these, delete table rows, and we can go back here. So that's set to false, so let's change these back to true. So we can tell when it updates again. And I can go back to here. Let's go flows, compare standard actions. So this would be one of the standard ways to update and create rows using the normal row by row method. And I've even gone in here and pre-filtered the rows that it needs to update and pre-filtered the rows that it needs to create so that I don't have to use two actions within the loop. And then in addition to that, I've also set these concurrencies to the max 50 concurrency settings. So this is about as fast as you could possibly do it with the standard method. And I will try running this. All right, that's all done. And let's check over here. All the data looks about the same. Looks like it may have missed a couple rows. Oh, or they're actually out of order because of the concurrency settings. Okay. But yeah, so it got up to 1000. So that took almost 26 minutes and took about 1000 of your limited action API calls to complete. Meanwhile, the batch upsert took less than 40 seconds and it only took about 15 action API calls to complete. This shows the batch actions are around 50 times faster than the very best row by row setup and take only 1.5% of the action API calls. This is a great improvement for anyone who has performance concerns for a build or who needs to reduce the number of API calls their flows are making to avoid throttling or other licensing issues. So I think at least a few of you watching will be interested in using this faster, more efficient method. So what might be some other things you should consider when using these Excel batch actions? Mainly if your data sets are less than 1 million cells, for example, a table that is 10 columns and 80,000 rows is less than a million cells, then the batch create and batch update can update or create many thousands of rows in a single run. It's only after 1 million cells that the program is set to use a different method because it can no longer efficiently perform the updates or creates while holding the full table in memory. That method for larger tables runs best with updates or creates with batch sizes of around 1,000 or less. So if you do have a larger table with greater than 1 million cells, then you may need to go over to the download page again and get this version B, which will help you update or create more than 1,000 rows in the larger tables that are over 1 million cells, because it will split up the data into batches of 1,000 and then update or create each batch of 1,000 in a loop and continue to run that loop until it's exhausted all the data that you send it. But to keep this video from going on too long, I'll likely describe how the version B loop flow works in a later video. So that wraps up this demonstration of Excel batch update, create, and upsert. I hope this all helps you create some really cool and useful stuff. And always feel free to comment, like, subscribe, and leave any feedback on the template download pages linked in the description. Have a good day.